Welcome to another episode of me trying to create beautiful things, and let me just say this right off the bat. This build was pretty unusual for me. First, because the idea came to me completely by accident, and second, I've never designed or built a table lamp before. I usually stick to obvious projects like tables, and to be honest, there was a fair amount of resistance I had to face, but I feel that's a good thing in general. The biggest challenge was wrapping my head around the fact that a lamp isn't just a functional object. It's more like a three-dimensional sculpture you see from all sides. This was my first time tackling something like this, so let's see how it turned out. But before we dive in, let's rewind a bit and talk about the origin story. One of the best things about my workshop is the view. While I'm working, I get to watch the sunlight shift throughout the day and the Galloway cattle doing their cattle thing. But this window had one particular flaw. It didn't have any glasses, and brace yourself, winter was coming. So I ordered some sheets of clear acrylic off the internet and invited my buddy to help me fitting up the window frame. The process was pretty straightforward. Acrylic cuts very easily on the table saw, and we secured the sheets in place with silicone and a bunch of my smaller clamps. It was while cutting those sheets to size that the idea of the lamp popped into my head. I thought, what if I layered these pieces to create a thick, opaque and cloudy plate of acrylic and illuminate it from underneath? It seemed like it could be something special. I started by stacking and gluing the acrylic sheets together with epoxy to create a solid block. After milling the ash boards to size, I continued cutting the 12 pieces using the cross-cut fence on the table saw. Beforehand, I changed the angle of the blade to 15.4 degrees in order to get perfect miters on the outside, but also enough room for the glue to set up comfortably. After each and every cut, I flipped the board so both angles would end up symmetrical. It may look a little complicated, but once it's set up perfectly, it's just a matter of cut and forget. So the design is pretty simple. The wooden base is made of 12 trapezoid pieces forming an almost perfect cylinder. On top there's a thick acrylic circle stacked on an acrylic tube, which fits snugly into the wooden base. This part was the trickiest, because there's not a lot of room and cutting into end grain is always nerve-wracking. The light bulb sits inside the column, shining upward to light the acrylic plate from underneath. The ultimate goal was to get the light evenly diffused, and I had an idea for how to pull that off. Next, I lined up the 12 trapezoids and taped them edge to edge. Then I flipped it over, applied glue to the seams and rolled it up like a carpet. I used the same method in my previous video for the table base. It's such a simple way to create complex looking geometric shapes, because you only need tape to clamp all parts together, and then wrapping it afterwards feels always a bit Christmassy. Of course I couldn't decide on just one design, so I figured why not make two versions and make it a tradition from now on, like I did in the coffee table video. Next, I squared up the ends on the miter saw and moved on to the most critical step, cutting a groove for the acrylic tube to fit into the wooden base. The base had to be fixed in place and stand perfectly straight on the drill press table. Cutting into end grain is tricky, so to keep the cutters from snagging the end grain, I superglued a small piece of plywood on top that kept everything sound and safe. To show you how important this simple jig was, I tried cutting the groove without it. You can see what happens here. Taking a shortcut gets punished.
Scheiße,
after a little repairing of a few cracks, it was time to cut out the acrylic circuits with a router. At this point I realized that I really don't enjoy working with this material. It curdles up to weird crumbles because of the heat of the router bit. It kinda melts and hardens simultaneously, so it gets in the way all the time. Once I did the rough cutting with a jigsaw, I could clean up the edges with a flush cutting bit to get perfect circle. For the final touch I used a roundover bit to soften the edges and produce more of those awful acrylic crumbles. Next time I will definitely use epoxy instead. This sanding block came in very handy as it has a variety of pad shapes for concave or convex surfaces. Well, and if you're still watching, let me take this moment to thank you and to encourage you to keep on watching, because the end result will be amazing. Also, please give a thumbs up and subscribe if you appreciate what I'm doing. This channel is still very young, so please let me know what you like or dislike. But let's carry on with those two little lamps. Well, I promised you in the beginning that I got an exceptional solution to make the clear acrylic glass opaque. And here it is. I put on maybe 6 or 8 coats in total, and with each and every coat it gets more cloudy. I sanded the bases with only 120 grit and it felt pretty smooth to the touch, so I didn't see any reason to go higher with the grits. Next I could cut the acrylic tube to their desired sizes and also chopped off a 10-degree angle on one of the bases as well as the corresponding end. I was surprised how stable it was compared to how tipsy it looks. Now it was time to glue on the top plates onto the acrylic tubes with regular CA glue. As the parts were rather small, I simply free-handedly put them in place. I tested the light diffusion by pushing up the light bulb from underneath, but also to find out the right height for the bulb. As you can see, the acrylic plate has these freckles, which are actually air bubbles trapped between the epoxy and the acrylic layers. I tried to get them out, but now I think they make a beautiful natural looking pattern. I wonder if I can enhance that effect by casting epoxy, which is notorious for trapping air bubbles. By the way, that aspect is why I love projects like this one, because it leads to experiments anyone can do. An epoxy starter set on Amazon costs like €20 or $20.78, so why not start with something small, cause it doesn't have to be a rivet table right from the start, right? Let's wrap this build up. For the finish I used a hard oil that I found in my chaotic collection of old cans and all kinds of different finishes. After I put it on, I let it soak in for about 10 minutes and wiped the excess off with a paper towel. The oil penetrates deep into the wood and darkens the natural color more than I actually expected, so this might be a great option for especially beech wood in order to get a more reddish mahogany-like end result. This may also be a teaser for upcoming projects, so stay tuned. The following steps required all of my patience because I had no activator spray left for the CA glue, which hardens the glue in seconds. And although I have many clamps of all sizes, in this case I had to use my most expensive and versatile clamp of them all, my hand. So I held everything in place and waited until the glue had set up. It's moments like these when you become fully aware of the luxury of a full spray bottle of activator. Then it was just a matter of threading the cables through the base and connecting it to the fixture. And that's it, finally done. I hope you like these 2 lamps as much as I do. This was by far one of my favorite projects because the whole process of making these was just fun. Oh, by the way, the acrylic sheets I used to fix the window in my workshop are already falling out. So yeah, there's still plenty to do. As I made 2 lamps, please let me know which one you prefer. I think I'd go for the angled one. Anyways, thanks for watching and see you next time.